You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, hope you all had a festive holiday and are ready for another dollop of hiking related stuff with episode number 124 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. I'm recording this on the day after Christmas Day, a day known traditionally as Boxing Day in the UK, but apparently a pretty normal day everywhere else. And as I celebrated Christmas in Spain, it's going to be a normal day for me. Apart from anything else, I'm not sure I could cram any more food into my face after yesterday. I hope that you all had a great time. This week we have somebody I've been wanting to speak with for a while. For those of you who listened to one of the other Hiking Radio Network shows this year, Returning to Katahdin, Greg Behrens, or GBolt, was the guy who Bruce Matson ended up hiking with through New Hampshire and Maine. He turned out to be a special influence in Bruce's hike, and I wanted to know more about that and, of course, the rest of his story. So Greg will be along soon. We also have the last, unless somebody else writes in this week, member of Mighty Blue's class of 2019 in Carlton Johnson. Carlton has worked hard to be in this class, and his story demonstrates some of the grit you need to be successful on a long-distance hike. And we're up to day 22 of The Year We Seize the Day by Elizabeth Best and Colin Bowles, our two intrepid adventurers who appeared to have something of a conflict last week. This week, Ellie is dealing with the fallout from a massive bust-up with Colin. But first, let's meet GBolt. Here's Greg Behrens. Okay, I'd like to introduce you all to Greg Behrens, or GBolt. Hi, Greg, how are you?
Real good, Steve.
Now, you're the guy who we met this year on our other program, Return to Katahdin, and you finished the AT with Bruce Matson along with Bruce's wife, Cheryl. How was that? How was that day?
That day was one of the best days of my life. I joke with them about it being right up there with marriage and children. Not quite as good as that, but definitely way up there. And having Cheryl along just made it that much more special. I know Bruce wanted her there and was really counting on her being there. And they both were worried about it taken away from me and my hike, and it didn't. It only added to it because instead of me being into myself and into my own mind, I got pulled out of that thinking and got to watch Cheryl transform and Cheryl be challenged. And it became a lot about her and getting her to the top and getting her back down safely. So it took the emphasis off of myself and my own pain and my own thoughts. And actually, that was a true blessing.
That's so cool. It really is. I know that it was very special to Bruce that she was there, and the fact that two of you helped her, because she didn't have 2,000 miles on her legs, and when you think about it, to do that climb straight off, and I know people who go southbound do that all the time, but I don't know how they do it that very first day. I mean, I struggled to get up Springer, so God knows what it's like to get up Katahdin on the first day.
Yes, we teased her about the fact that she thru-hiked the trail the smartest way you could by doing Springer and then doing the Virginia Triple Crown and then finishing at Katahdin, and we skipping all the in-between parts, and she was the smartest one of us all. But definitely was inspiring to watch her, knowing that it's that difficult. For that reason, I wouldn't go southbound because that turned out to be probably the toughest day on the trail for me.
Wow.
I just, for whatever reason, finishing on Katahdin was the toughest day on the trail, and definitely took the longest. I'd never night hiked before, and yet I had to turn on the headlamp to finish. And so it was its own unique experience. And I say that basically the whole trail was wrapped up in one day by hiking Katahdin up and back down.
I'm surprised. I know when I had by then it was just so exciting for me. I had obviously I clearly had my trail legs by then, and to me it was one of the easier days. I must admit I found it just a joy. The whole day was a joy for me, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I didn't find it difficult at all because by then I was fit as a flea, as we say in England.
Yes, it surprised us because while we were fit, I think mentally we were exhausted at that point, and physically we were exhausted at that point. And I think that's why it became so tough. We were excited about finishing, and we took off like, jet rockets to begin the easy part. And
Yeah.
before you knew it, we were climbing. But then once we hit a certain section, it just seemed to take it right out of us. And I
Wow.
think mentally we were exhausted, and that's what made it such a difficult day.
Yeah. Well, you're back home now. So how are you feeling? Has your body sorted itself out after the AT? Because there's no doubt about it. It is a challenge for people of our age. I think you and I have similar generation. How are you feeling right now?
I'm finally feeling back to normal. It's taken about 3 months, and I didn't realize how much the trail impacted me and how different I was when I first came home, because to me it was normal. But now, reflecting back on the first week back home, and I met my brother again this weekend, who saw me for a coming home celebration, and he described how I was removed and quiet and distant, and my wife
Yeah.
called me a zombie, and it didn't register at that point. But now, looking at where I am today compared to coming off the trail, I am definitely a different person, and I'm back to a lot of my normal self, but there's still a part of me that will ever be forever changed by the trail, I believe.
Yeah, I think you leave part of yourself up there, don't you? And I know that when we spoke before about doing this, you said that your wife said you were in a fog when you first got home.
Yes.
How did it feel to you those first few days then, while we're talking about that?
I felt like I couldn't get up to speed. Everything was coming at me too fast, and
Yeah.
so I withdrew. I didn't feel like I was part of the world that was here, and even just being at home didn't feel like home because it was still at a faster pace than I had been at on the trail. And so that fast pace coming at me, I found myself withdrawing and isolating and just trying to take small steps and small bites of home life and tried to adapt to it. And it totally caught me by surprise.
Yeah. Did you think you'd lost something and you weren't going to get it back? Because I must admit, I thought in those first few months, it was worrying actually how different I felt. But did you always thought you knew you were going to come back, as it were?
No, I didn't. I really thought, how am I going to find the new me? And I thought the change was going to be forever. I found the same thing you did, but I thought whatever I had lost on the trail and whoever I had become hiking down for Katahdin was a new me, and the old me I didn't think I was ever going to get back to. And
Wow.
I worried about it because I didn't know whether I wanted to or if I didn't want to. And so not having a choice and not having control was definitely caused some anxiety.
Are you back to what you were before, or do you feel this is an ongoing process?
No, I think I'm getting back to where I was before.
Right.
And
Right.
now the ongoing process is to find, okay, I'm back to who I was before. So what is new and different about me that the trail taught me? And I think that's the ongoing part for the future. But as
Sure.
far as recovering myself, I had a unique experience that caused me to recover the old me. And I'm happy that the old me is back and I feel more like myself before the trail.
Wow. Wow. That's something it's funny actually when I was doing the hike and I was about to go out there, I was trying to find something to change myself. I wanted to be, I'd already named myself Mighty Blue after my soccer team in the UK, but I was still Steve and I couldn't find a way to make myself Mighty Blue. So in the end, I decided to change my appearance. I shaved my head totally bald just so I could be Mighty Blue. And I felt I needed that to transition to be on the trail. Did you ever feel that back at the beginning, or you just went on the trail as Greg and just developed as you developed?
I just went on the trail as Greg. I had the benefit of retiring after 35 years in education.
Right.
And so I've told people recently that I haven't retired yet because I simply changed jobs. I went from the job of being an educator in a school system, retired from that, and then took over the job of thru-hiking the Appalachian Trail.
All right. All right.
And so when I came home, that caused me problems because now I came home to a life that I didn't have before the trail. And now I came home to truly retire. And I'm still trying to figure out, okay, what does retirement mean? Because I simply changed jobs and now I'm set to retire. So I came back a different person than I left. So when I left as Greg, but I quickly learned a different lifestyle and changed some tremendous things about me on the trail that I definitely needed to change and definitely will use in retirement.
Can you share any of those, or do you want to keep those to yourself?
No, I'll share. For me, and it was the trail. The trail caused it itself.
Yeah.
I was very type A, very driven, very much thought that I would accomplish so many miles a day and I would hike this and I would make it to Katahdin. And it was always about accomplishing a task for the day, setting out something, a goal, and accomplishing that goal every single day, and actually type A driving it and not allowing myself to relax. And
Right.
what I found almost immediately was you don't have control on the trail. And I heard it either on one of your previous podcasts or through the reading that I did because I read a great deal. I read all the books and
Sure.
visited all the YouTube sites. And somewhere somebody said that you can't attack the trail. You have to let the trail come to you. You are never going to control the trail. The trail is going to ultimately control you. And I actually chuckled and thought, no, that's not the way I'm built. I'm going after it. I'm driven. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to attack it. And I found out that that saying is exactly correct. You can't go at the trail. It will beat you. And I quickly learned that you don't have control. Control is an illusion. And you control what you can, but you have to chill and relax. And one of the last things that I was told before leaving for the trail was, you're prepared, GB. Now what you've got to do is you've got to quit overthinking it and relax.
Yeah, that's right. When I see Facebook these days, a lot of these youngsters, that's not fair. Not fair to say youngsters. Everybody does it. Everybody's overthinking it. And I'm going next year and I'm overthinking it already. So I think we all do tend to overthink it. And you're right. When you get there, it will give you permission to do certain things. You'll do what you could do, won't you? And overthinking it, so it can drive you crazy. And I saw a post in Facebook earlier on about somebody said, there's 100 days to go. Anybody else going this day as well? You know, and one of the comments in the thing says, I'm going to be driving myself crazy with 1 week to go. And that's what you kind of do, don't you? You get ready for the trail so much, but you just can't wait for it to start. And then it really hits you around the head like a sledgehammer, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It almost instantly, the first day was not what I had planned. And it's funny, you mentioned people that are leaving now. I'm watching the 2019 hikers get ready and geared up, and I'm right there with them because it was only a year ago that I was doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I read where one guy was asking, okay, how do I plan out these first 3 days? And I thought that was me. I had it planned out and knew exactly what I was doing, and it went out the window day one because my original plan was to hike up to Springer on a Thursday, the day before my birthday, and stay at the shelter on top of Springer. And then actually my due date to leave was March 16th, my 58th birthday, as a birthday present. Well, I hit Springer and I was so pumped that I thought, I can't stop here. I just can't. I'm not supposed to. So I hiked on and thought, well, I'll go to that first shelter, Stover Shelter. And I hit that shelter and met up with a young man, homebound, that was successful hiking the entire trail this year.
Wow.
And homebound and I stopped and looked at the trail to the Blue Blaze to the shelter and the AT carrying on. And he actually said, I'm continuing on. I'm going to go on. And I said, okay, I'm right there with you. We'll just head on to Hawk Mountain.
Wow.
And we went about a quarter mile. And he stopped and he said, no, this isn't smart for me. This isn't right. He said, I set Stover as the stopping point. I'm going back and I'm stopping. And I looked at him and I thought, well, he makes a good point. But that's where I decided, as long as I was heading north and going one direction on the trail, I never wanted to backtrack. And so I said, well, no, I think I'm going to continue on. There's a place up ahead that I know has camping and has water. And so I'm going to head there and call it a day. And so I headed on, and he turned around and went back. And we met 3 days later at Neal's Gap and reconnected. But he said that was a big key for him, was turning back day one. And a key for me was continuing on, because in our own way, we were both doing what the trail was signaling us to do, and both had to make the decision to do what we had to do.
Isn't that fascinating? Doesn't that surprise you?
Yes, it does, especially to talk about it now and look back on it, because that first day set the tone for both of us and truly was a telltale sign of what was to come. Because when we left Neal's Gap on a Sunday, we left together and did an 18-mile day. And that was my first 18-mile day. That was a huge day for me. And it became the norm for him. He did 18 to 22s after that. I think his longest day was a 27-miler. And for me, I did that 18-mile day and thought, I've overdone it, and I'm going to drop back to the 14 miles a day. And that's what I did. So we both found what was our new norm and what was our hiking speed. And it was so different from each other.
Now, this is kind of strange, but I actually got about 3/4 of an inch shorter when I did my hike, but my feet got wider because they got pounded, I suppose. Did you notice any physical changes in yourself? We talked about the mental side of it. Did you notice any physical changes?
Yes, the upper body strength was totally gone. My legs were decent size and muscular, but I had no upper body strength whatsoever. And one time in New York, after we came through the squeeze, I think it is, it's
lemon squeezer.
Yeah. I thought, well, that was nothing. They made a big deal out of it, but that was really nothing. And what I wasn't prepared for was that once you got through there and went a little bit further, there was a climb up a rock face that was, I would say that the first hand grip was about 6.5 feet high, 7 feet high.
Yeah.
And there was a blue blaze around it, but I thought, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm going to try and climb this. So I put my trekking poles up on top and got ready to climb up it, and didn't have the strength. I physically couldn't do it. So I looked over, and to the right side was more of a rock outcropping that had grips.
That's right.
And I watched a young guy. I sat back and watched a young guy try the left-hand side. He couldn't do it either, so he switched to the right, and he went up and over that right side like it was nothing. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to follow his lead. So I went over to the right side and started to climb up. And once my feet left the ground and I went to switch hands and put my hand on top and finish climbing, I lost all grip, all strength, and fell flat on my back.
Oh, wow. Nasty.
And, it was a nasty fall. It took it all out of me. And while I lied there, a guy ran up to help me stand up. And I actually told him, I said, no, let me lie here for a second. I said, that took everything out of me. And so finally he helped me up and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I didn't hit my head or anything. I just, luckily the pack took everything." And I said, "I hope I didn't break anything in the pack," which luckily I didn't. He goes, "Well, do you want some help? Are you going to try it and want some help? I can help try and boost you up, and we'll take the pack off and we'll figure a way around it." And I said, "No," I said, "I'm going to take the Blue Blaze around it." I said, you got to know when to fold. And I said,
That's
this is
right.
definitely a
Damn
time
right.
to fold.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the afternoon, I was depressed. It was, as Bruce said, it was my banana pudding moment. Because I thought, if I can't get through New York, which nothing's written about and nothing's stated, if I can't get through New York, how am I ever going to get through the whites? And it really put me into a funk where I at that point did not think I was going to finish the trail.
Wow, that bad.
It's when I first got contacted by Bruce, and Bruce said, "I'm kind of struggling. So if we can hook up and hike together, I'd like that." And I told him, "Yeah, I'd like to hike with you as well." And then I also got a message back from Recon, a guy I had hiked through up to Pennsylvania, from 100 miles to Pennsylvania with.
Yeah.
He had gotten off the trail because of an injury. And here I thought, I'm not going to make it. And he had been reading my journal, and he texted me immediately and said, "GBolt, don't doubt yourself." He said, "You can do this. Get to Vermont and I'll get you through Vermont." And he said, "Hopefully by that time I can return to the trail." And that's when he made a promise to get me through the whites. He said, "I will personally get you through the whites. You're going to complete this trail." And so he had faith in me when I didn't have faith in myself. And so that was the lowest point on the trail, was right there. And it was all due to physical upper body strength.
Yeah, it does. It definitely gets you. There's no question about it. I think they call it the T-Rex look, don't they? You've got this huge lower body, but this pathetic, puny upper body. So it's terrible. You look absolutely terrible. Were you always into the outdoors as a youngster? Have you? This is how you actually got on the AT in the first place. Were you very much an outdoorsy person, or had you never done this?
Yes, I was. When I was a child, family vacations were spent camping. I canoe floated down rivers a lot with church groups.
Right.
And so, yes, I was outdoors, but when I got married, my wife wasn't. And so I still did it on my own a little bit, a great deal of backpacking, but it was always overnight trips.
So when did you just consider that the AT might be something you'd like to do then?
When did the AT come back into being?
Yeah.
I think you have a calling. I read a book by Jennifer Farr and watched her once, and she said she was called to the trail. And I feel that I was called as well. The first inkling of the Appalachian Trail was when I was in middle school, and we passed under the trail twice, once on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and once on Route 70 in Maryland, outside of DC. And I saw the sign for it. And I still to this day remember thinking about the trails from Georgia to Maine. And what an amazing thing that was.
Yeah.
And also growing up in Ohio, you were big Grandma Gatewood fans. And so I had hiked the Grandma Gatewood Trail in Hocking Hills. And so I was familiar with the AT, but wasn't really called to hike it.
But you told me you found a book, and
Yes.
and it wasn't a Bill Bryson book. Which was the book you found, Greg?
Yes. The book was Hiking Through, and it was written by another Ohioan, Paul Stutzman, and he lost his wife to cancer, and so he hiked the trail for that purpose. And I read his book, and that's when the trail started calling me. But I knew I hadn't lost my wife. I wasn't suffering illnesses. And so it was kind of different than his hike. But I think the trail calls who it's supposed to call and puts a seed in you and starts to grow. And starts to develop.
It was Bryson for me, but the Stutzman book was one of my very early ones. And I think I may have mentioned to you that he's given me permission to read his book next on my show. So I'm really looking forward to that, because it was one of my earliest AT books and one that registered highly with me. So obviously I was pleased when you said that was one that you did it as well. So what was it about the story that Paul told that reached out to you? Why was it the adventure, the challenge, or was it something else?
It was all of it. It was the adventure, the challenge, and yet the faith that the trail will give you what it's supposed to give you. And the lessons you learn on the trail are specific to you versus the person next to you that's hiking the same hike, but getting a totally different hike in their hike. And that's what Paul's book caused me to read AWOL, where you read about how he
Right.
broke away from society. And so that fed into me thinking, okay, I've been an educator for all these years and now I'm retired. What am I going to transition to next? And then book after book, Odessa, Jennifer Farr, challenging herself and gaining confidence in herself and for what for what life would hold for her from there on out. And so you read all these books time after time after time, and each person is telling a different story, but they
Yes.
all share the trail in common. And then
Yeah.
also reading your books and listen to your podcast, it came out that you had your story to tell. And so that's what truly is amazing about the trail, is that it has its story, and then each person that hikes it has their story. And
Yes, definitely.
while they're common, they're all different.
To be honest with you, Greg, I think one of the things why this podcast has continued to thrive in terms of the downloads is that literally everybody does this differently, don't they? You could be walking next to somebody and yet they're experiencing the day entirely differently to you. So, and I love that part of it. And having your own life laid bare sometimes by the trail is a very humbling experience. And I think that everybody who comes on this show has a different story to tell, and I kind of knew they would do as well. Now, you said you were already a backpacker. Did you already have the gear you needed, or did you tweak stuff, or did you buy different stuff?
No, I was a backpacker, but I was a backpacker for 20 years ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
I went to a speaker right away and also online, but he said that there are two types of hikers. There are hikers that camp and campers that hike.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a hiker that camped. He did the bare minimal and was ultralight before ultralight was cool. And I was just the opposite. I hiked to camp. I like spending time in camp. And to me, a long day was 8 miles. And so when I hiked the Smoky Mountains, for example, and backpacked the Smoky Mountains, it was always low miles. And people would try to talk me into doing the AT in the Smokies and doing 14-mile days. And I'm like, no way, you're crazy. 14 miles, I'm not doing it. 8 miles, set up camp, lie around, relax. And that's the way I started out. And so my gear was camping gear, and it was 20 years old, and it was 8 miles and you're done. So when I started looking at 14, 15 miles a day that could stretch to 20 miles a day, and I started the YouTube watching Darwin, the very ones you mentioned, Darwin, Dixie, and watching Redbeard and his journey, and watching the gentleman that probably was most transformative on the trail, Spielberg, and watching his videos, I knew instantly that I had to get the weight down. And so what I did was I set out to replace everything in my pack, and then replace the pack itself with updated, new ultralight material. And so that's what I ended up doing. I don't think I carried anything from previous years.
So what was your pack weight when you signed in at Springer?
When I signed in and waited at Springer with 4 days food and 2 liters of water, it was 32 pounds.
32 pounds. That's not bad at all, is it? I was 42. But 4 days of food. Did you find that carrying too much food was sometimes a bit of an issue? I sometimes wonder whether I've heard this from a number of people that, because I got packages from home, there was often 5 or 6 days of food there. My wife would just try to feed me up relentlessly. Carrying too much food became an issue for me in some cases. Or was 4 days what you would normally carry?
4 days what ended up being what I normally carried,
Right.
but it was way too much to start with. I left on a Thursday and I hit Neal's Gap Saturday about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it was less than 3 days away. So I was still carrying food out of Neal's Gap that I didn't think I would be carrying. And I didn't learn my lesson at Neal's Gap. At Neal's Gap, I went back to 4 days of food, and I didn't need 4 days of food to start the trail with. I needed 3 days at most.
Right.
And then I did the same thing at Fontana Dam. I packed 7 days of food to get me through the Smokies. And
Yes.
I didn't need 7 days of food. I needed 4.5 days, 5 days at most.
Yeah, that's right. So was the trail, because you read all the books and you saw all the videos, was the trail, because and especially now we do see so much of it on these videos, was it how you'd imagine it would be, or did it surprise you in many ways?
It surprised me. I thought that, I even worried, did I overwatch too much and overthink it too much to where nothing's going to be exciting because you've seen it so many times? And that would have occurred with the iconic places I went to. I would say that Neal's Gap was kind of a letdown because it is such an iconic place, but I had seen it so many times that it wasn't new. It was like I had been there before.
Sure.
But it was still an iconic place, though, and it still had a story to tell me, and I still ended up spending the night in the bunk room, which was my first night in a hostile setting with other people. And I had never planned on that. I planned on hiking through Neal's Gap. And so it had its own experience that made it special. And I found that was true all along the trip. You can't capture on film and in pictures the true beauty that's there. And even though we try, being there and being in the moment cannot be replaced. And so even though I over-prepared and overthought and watched all these YouTubes, I don't think that it ended up taking away from it at all, because you can't capture it.
But isn't that true of life itself, though? I think going to see any band live is so much better than listening to them on a DVD. Just seeing them and experiencing the moment when the band comes out and stuff like that. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I would go and see any live event. I just think it's so much better than seeing it on TV or anything like that.
I've never thought of it that way, but you're exactly right.
Yeah. So what have you learned about yourself from this trip?
I learned that I don't have to be in control, and I've learned to sit
back. That hurts for a type A person, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Very helpful. Sit back, relax, and what I look for now is for living in that moment, what that moment means to the people around me. It's not even myself anymore. I look to other people and what they are going through and what they are excited about, and I find pleasure in their excitement or in what they're going through or in sharing the moment with them, and then finding out that what you think of as giving is immediately returned to you tenfold. And so I've learned that you have to be present in the moment, and each moment has its own thing that it's going to give you.
Sure.
But you can't attack it. You can't try and see what it is and experience what it is. You just have to release yourself to the moment and know that it's going to provide you with exactly what you need.
Well said. Well, that's really well said. I'm going to ask you one more question, actually. And as you know, on the Returning to Katahdin show, he says that finding you was like an answer to a prayer. So how did you actually come to meet up with Bruce first time?
The first time was at Mohican Outdoor Center. He was hiking with Irish Paul, who had gotten 3 or 4 days ahead of me, because I had hiked a great deal with Irish Paul back in Tennessee and the early part of Virginia. North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia. And Irish Paul had pulled pretty far ahead of me, and he had suffered his own injury, a broken nose. And so I saw him at the home place while he tried to recover there, but he seemed to stay ahead of me all the way through. And
Sure.
when I went through I had an illness, a week-long dysentery problem, where my miles were cut tremendously down
I'm
to
sure.
8 to 10. And so I had lost some time and fallen behind some in Pennsylvania, coming out of Harper's Ferry through Pennsylvania.
Right.
And so when I left Pennsylvania, I left solo for the first time in a long time, because Recon, the guy I had been hiking with, was taken off the trail with a stress fracture of the leg. And so he was gone. He was back home in Vermont, and I was now on my own. And that was a unique experience, and one I'm grateful for, because it's the way I had planned my hike, but it never occurred. I was never alone from the beginning on.
Yes,
and so now I truly was alone. Everybody I had hiked with had jumped ahead, and here I was, just moving at my own pace. And that was nice to do, to set out and do what I was supposed to do and let the trail come to me. So actually, after Delaware Water Gap, I set out and I hiked only 10 miles for that day and came to the Mohican Center. And I had not planned on stopping there, but it just seemed like that was where I was meant to be. So I pulled off the trail, went into the center, and decided to spend the night. And while I was checking in, Irish Paul came up to me, and we hugged and got to, typical things when two hikers meet up.
Yes.
You're instantly in conversations and
That's
just
right.
excited to see each other. And so he said, well, go ahead and get set up and come back over here. I got somebody I want you to meet.
Right.
So I went and set up camp and came back to the building and got something to drink. Coca-Cola was my nemesis every time I pulled into a town or a machine. And so I sat down and sat next to this guy that Irish Paul introduced as Bruce Matson. And I looked at him and I go, I didn't even know him by Bruce. I knew him more by RTK. I said, RTK? And he goes, yes. And so that's when we first met. But he was days ahead of me. He was waiting on a package at the Mohican Center, so he kept returning, but he was actually still 3 days ahead of me. And so after that, I followed him north into New York, and we were set to meet at Bear Mountain. He was hiking with his daughter, waiting to meet up with his daughter, and we thought we were going to hike out of Bear Mountain together. But he ended up leaving at 6 in the morning, and I ended up leaving at 9 because I had a shuttle. I couldn't get there any earlier. And so we've, again, lost touch with each other. And I continued to follow him all through New York, New Jersey, and listen to him on the podcast like everybody else.
Yes, you were listening on the podcast, weren't you? That's right.
So it was kind of crazy to hear him on the podcast, but it was enjoyable. It was kind of cool because I felt like he was sort of a celebrity and I was sort of following behind him, sort of like a groupie. And then one day in the Whites, early in the Whites, Recon had rejoined me. He had gotten the release from the doctors and rejoined me to finish his promise of seeing me through the Whites. And so coming through the Whites, we were at lunchtime and we had stopped at a shelter at a Blue Blaze, and Recon was talking about, do we need to get water or not? And I said, yeah. I said, why don't we top off some water and take advantage? It's right here on the trail. So I was filling up with water, and another gentleman came up to me and was talking to me. And we were just sharing who's around you, who's where, and who's there. And I asked about Bruce. And he said, well, he's back at the shelter just off trail, probably eating lunch. And I said, oh, really? And so out of the middle of nowhere, in the middle of an afternoon, not knowing we were both at the same spot, suddenly I heard his name and he was right there. So I told Recon, I said, I got to stop off and talk to Bruce. I haven't seen him since Mohican Center. And Recon goes, go ahead. I'll just wait here a few minutes. And so I ran over and quickly, hugged Bruce and talked to him and told him that I was following him on the podcast and just needed to stop by and say hello. And he said, oh, it's great to see you. He said, where are you planning on spending the night? And we told him. And he said, well, I may get there. And sure enough, that night he got to where we were at. And we spent the night at the AMC campground. But then the next day we separated because he had plans on actually staying in a hut, and we were doing more miles beyond that hut. And so I got a day ahead of him again, but then we finally caught up in Gorham at the Barn Hostel, and that's when he actually was there, and we set out to, we went out and had a lunch dinner together, and we're just talking, and that's when he finally at the dinner table said, Recon and GBolt, I really think I could stay with you guys, and I'd really like to hike with somebody. He goes, I really need to be with somebody. Do you mind if I, tag along with you? And it was kind of funny because I really didn't answer him because I wanted to see what Recon had to say. And Recon's the one that said, oh, sure, Bruce, come on. Yeah, you can join up with us. He goes, I just hope we don't hold you back. And he goes, I think it's going to be the other way around, guys.
It was such an important thing for him to meet up with you. I know it was. He told me several times. And it's funny how the serendipity of the trail does that to you. And I'm so pleased that you did meet up with him, because I'm sure between the two of you helped each other and then finally Cheryl up Katahdin. So that's just perfect, wasn't it?
Yes, it worked out the way it was supposed to, because there was one day Bruce doubted he could hang with us, and Recon told him, he said, no, we're a group now. He said, all for one. He said, each of us is going to have a bad day. And sure enough, a couple days later, I was slow. And then the next day after I was slow, Recon, that's when he fell. And he started to suffer the consequences of that fall and ended up with broken ribs. And Recon ended up dropping out totally. So in the end, Recon saw me through the whites, but I tell Bruce all the time, Recon saw me through the whites and got me to Maine. You got me to Katahdin.
I think you'll find you did it. If each of you did something for the other, so I think that was a really good thing. But I really appreciate you coming and tell us the story, then, Greg. It's been I've known of you obviously for a long time because of the RTK show, and I'm really pleased that we had a chance to connect and talk about this. So thanks very much for coming along.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for not only the RT podcast, but Mighty Blue podcast. It means so much to so many people out there. You're touching lives. And I'd like to finish on this note. To me, most people won't do a thru hike and shouldn't do a thru hike. They aren't called to do a thru hike. But everybody has the ability to step foot on the AT or on a local trail or on a metro park trail close to their homes. Everybody has a chance to get into nature. And that's really what this came down to is being out in nature. And your program does an excellent job of that, saying, hey, look, a thru hike is a thru hike, but there's section hikes and there are just people that are going to day hike. And you've made it a point to include everybody and trying to get everybody to set foot on the AT or on a trail itself.
I appreciate that. And especially you saying that, because I think it's a really important thing as well. The people, we're living in a country which gives this stuff for free. Isn't that amazing? I just find it extraordinary that we can do this. And I love it out there. So anybody who ever wants to get out, don't ever be put off by it. Listen to the two of us. I mean, Greg, you're 58, I'm 66, Bruce is 61 or 62. We're not young men yet. We got out there. We're certainly not super athletes either. We got out there and did it. So I think anybody who wants to come out on the trail should absolutely do so. But I really thank you for coming along, and hopefully we'll catch up soon, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy.
Take care.
Bye. What a level-headed, calm man he is. Yet he too had problems when he returned home. I remember thinking that my experience of loss and disconnection, when I was going through it, was somehow unusual. It's kind of tough to complain, even to articulate that you're a bit depressed when you've just spent 6 months of freedom from responsibility in the woods. Yet we've heard that this is a common theme for so many hikers that we've had on the show. Greg feels that he was called to the trail, yet he too suffered when he finished. My guess is that many of those of us going next year don't even consider what they'll experience when they get back home. Yet if this show is any guide, some sort of depression can really set in unless you have a plan of action to deal with it. I really think that would make an interesting topic, so if some of you have views on this phenomenon, I'd love to have you on the show to talk about it and how you deal with it. When Greg and I had finished the recording, he sent me some pictures and links for the show notes. He also added a paragraph that I thought I'd like to read to you all. Here's what he wrote. Finally, he said, I didn't hit this on the podcast and I really wish I had. I use the motto, keep the faith and keep hiking, H-I-K-N, for this journey. Faith is simply the belief that your daily needs will be met and that you are protected and cared for hiking the trail. It's often said that the trail provides, but in reality the trail is simply God's creation and an example of God's existence, the Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. My story of the Appalachian Trail is one of growing ever stronger in faith. Faith in the goodness of people I met along the trail, faith in being immersed in nature, yet feeling so protected and cared for, and finally faith in the grace given by the one that created and saves us in this life and eternally. The trail truly let me live my faith because, like you, I question, have doubts, and I'm not very good at preaching what it is that I believe. Thank you for your podcast that have included such diverse people from all walks of life. Now that was obviously important to Greg, so I thought it was important to honour it and read it out. So we move on now to the class of 2019. Carlton Johnson will be one of my compadres next year, and for Carlton, it won't be his first rodeo. Let's hear what brought Carlton back to the AT for 2019. Here he is. Okay, we're on with Carlton Johnson. Hi, Carlton. How are you?
I'm doing well.
And you've already answered, actually, or I've already answered my first question to you, which is, please introduce yourself, your name, your age, where you live, and your start date on the AT for next year, if you've already chosen it.
Yes, I'm Carlton Johnson. I'm 60 years old. I'll be 61 when my hike starts. And I will be starting March the 18th. March the
18th. You're already set with that. Have you already registered that start date with the ATC?
I did, yes.
You did? Okay.
I did register it. I found a way that you could register really early through one of the blogs, and went in and printed it off and ready to go.
Cool. Well, I don't know which order we're going to be playing these recordings, but I know from the email to you that you sent me originally saying you'd like to do this. My next question is normally, is this your first long distance hike? But it's not, is it?
No, it's not. I made an attempt in 2016 to thru-hike the AT and got injured and had to leave the trail. But I stayed on the trail for about 3 months after actually breaking a leg. I thought it was sprained, and so I stayed on the trail. Yeah.
You hiked for 3 months with a broken leg?
I did. It was, and it's a true story. Now I took a lot of 0 days trying to get it well, and it just wouldn't heal and wouldn't heal. But in reality, the leg was broken in 2 places, and I walked 270 miles on a badly broken leg. Very painful.
Did you do yourself any damage? Did you do anything that once you realised, or once they found out it was broken, did they reset it, or was it too late for resetting it, or had it reset itself?
I was scared to death when I found out it was broken. I was just scared. Like, okay, I have ended my hiking career. I will never be able to hike again. This will never heal properly. Yeah. I am so stupid what I've done. And so I went home, made an appointment with a specialist. So, came highly recommended. Took him in the X-ray, and he looked at it and goes, "Are you in any pain?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Well, there's significant healing." And he goes, "I don't think it's something I would have operated on. And unless you're in pain, you're good to go. I think you'll be okay."
Wow.
And after that, I did about a 45-mile hike on the AT up in the Shenandoah National Park just to test it, and did fine. So I'm just extremely lucky. To tell you some of the day I went and got the X-ray, I was staying at Uncle Johnny's hospital.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he's the one that told me, you've got to get to a doctor. It should have healed by now. And he just sat me down, you've got to do it. And so I listened to him, and one of his shuttle drivers took me. And after I came back out of the hospital, I looked at the shuttle driver and I said, my leg is broken in 2 places. I just walked 270 miles on a broken leg. I said, I'm either incredibly tough or incredibly stupid. And he went, nah. He goes, you're just a hiker.
That's great. Oh, dear. Thing is, if you don't know, you don't know. You think you can walk things off, don't you? How did the injury happen? Did you fall badly? Well, you must have fallen really badly.
Well, I did. And actually, I sprained both ankles. I turned my left one, tried to catch myself. My right leg went underneath of me. Oh. And so I had 2 what I thought were sprained ankles.
Wow. Nasty.
It was very early on. I was just short of Blood Mountain.
Wow. Oh, and that was early.
So, yes, it's very early. And, of course, Blood Mountain is not easy with 2 good legs. So that night I wouldn't take my hiking shoes off because I was afraid I couldn't get them back on the next morning,
Sure.
And so I get up the next day and make it across Blood Mountain. And I'm just going to tell you, every step was excruciating, but I made it. And plus I had read, too, that quite often when they come to rescue you, they're going to try to get you to walk off the mountain anyway. I mean, it's just too far to carry people.
Yes,
so,
right.
and I had read Appalachian Trails, not Trails, but the book.
That gets
into
Davis.
the psychology.
Zach Davis. Yeah.
And, he did a great job of prepping you that you're going to have to accept a certain amount of discomfort and pain. And so I was ready for, to suffer some.
Wow.
And I guess I was too ready to suffer.
Wow, good for you. At least you got it sorted out and you effectively walked it cured. But, man, that's tough. And I'm glad it hasn't affected you going forward. So how long has the AT been on your radar then as something you'd like to do?
Well, it's something I've always dreamed of. Anytime I did anything as an adult athletically, it was always more towards endurance, jogging or whatnot.
Sure.
And I just was always drawn to that. I was raised on a farm, like a lot of people in the South at my age. It used to be the South was primarily an agricultural community.
Yes.
It's not that way as much now. But you grew up playing in the woods and the fields, and you really got a love for that, and it was just seemed to be a natural thing, and for me, and of course, I don't live far from the Appalachian Trail.
Sure.
I live about an hour and a half drive. Shenandoah National Park is there, so it was not something that was that foreign to me.
Okay, so that was that's something you wanted to do. And how are you able to take the time off work, or are you actually retired now? You said you were 60.
I am. I'm retired from the Virginia State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation. I was a special agent for the state police.
That was easy enough for you to go because you got the time to do it. So, and when you were doing it last year, obviously you were going northbound. Are you doing the same thing? And are you going to go from where you got to, or are you going to start from the beginning again?
No, I'm going to go back. Actually, it was in 2016 when I made my attempt, and I'm going to go back down to Springer. I'm going to start over.
Good for you. Good for you.
I'll tell you the truth. I truly enjoyed my time on the trail. I have to tell people, don't feel sorry for me about this, because you got to understand, I stayed on trail for 3 months. I took 40 0 days, okay, to try to get well. That meant I was either partying in a trail town or at a hostel. So it was not a bad experience. It was a blast.
Oh, dear. What about your gear? Is your gear the same as you had before, or are you putting together different gear for this? Did you learn stuff on the trail that necessitated getting different gear?
I decided I had a hammock system last time, a very expensive one actually, and I just found that was just not as convenient as I had hoped it would be.
Oh, really?
And I actually found a tent is just more convenient and just more versatile, really, and easier to set up in a hurry when you need to. And that's one thing that will be different.
Sure.
But, I'm a big lover of they don't call it that anymore, but it's Cuban fiber. And so I've got, a Hyperlake mountain gear bag, and I am thinking about switching to a Cuban fiber tent. Everything you do learn is it is true, the old adage of as the weight goes down, the fun goes up. And so
yes.
I am thinking about right now I have a big Agnes copper copper spur too, and it's a great substantial tent, and I love how sturdy it is, but I see there are lighter alternatives, although you're getting into single wall and condensation problems, that type of thing. But it's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah, there's always a trade-off. Absolutely right. Yeah. So how you've got your legs feels better now. How are you preparing? Because you now know what it's like. How are you preparing for the physicality of the hike, or are you just going to let it get fit as you keep going? Is that what you do, or do you prepare by hiking around, where you live right now?
Well, no, I am doing more preparation. That's one thing I think that maybe has led to the injury was I thought I had prepared, but probably not enough. I'm losing some significant weight, which I've been working on and been successful with. Also, I have a brother who has a 168-acre farm, and I tease him, it's not a level spot on it. And it's great because I said it mimics the trail. Wow. The extremes, ups and downs. So I go to his farm and hike.
What a nice opportunity for you to do that, eh? God, dear me. I live in Florida. There's no way to prepare for mountains or anything like that in Florida, let me tell you.
Yeah, I've often, I really looked into the Florida Trail. I'm just... the idea of walking in water quite often, and also, I'll be quite honest with you, a lot of people are scared of bears. I'm not scared of black bears at all, but I am scared of alligators and anacondas. But
with good reason. With good reason,
which seems to be that Florida's got. I've got quite a little infestation of the boa constrictors down there.
That's right. You're right. Yeah. So you're going northbound again, which is something you wanted, which I love the idea of that as well. And what about? And you talked about I talked about the physicality just now. What about the mental aspect? Because you obviously saw tough times. You must have seen tons of tough days with your injury. How do you cope with the mental side of this hike? Because I still think it's 90% mental. So how do you cope with the various aspects that come up on the trail when you get these really, really bad days?
Well, as far as the mental aspect of it, there were obviously bad days I was injured.
Sure.
But I've been off trail for a couple of years, and I had to get a few personal things I needed to do. I needed to be off trail for a couple of years, and that's fine. But I will tell you this, I bore my friends and family to death because all I talk about is hiking. I mean, every conversation leads to hiking somehow, and that's all I think about. And as far as what I can tell you is if you like backpacking, and there's one hostel owner told me one time how she got into hiking. It was one bad experience and she was hooked. And it's the way it is for me is that I would rather be on the trail right now, and it's been raining for 5 days, than not be on the trail. I've learned that much about myself. Wow. It's like I love the trail community, and I love the challenge of the trail, and it's the only place. I'm not going to not happy without the trail, but it's a place that's my bliss. And even a bad day on the trail is better than not being on the trail.
Well, I can tell you, the only thing you talk about is hiking. You wait till you finish the trail. If you get to finish next year, or next year rather, then you're going to be even more boring about hiking, because that's exactly what I do as well. Every conversation turns to hiking in some form or other when you get off it. So prepare your friends for that. And how have you planned your money for this trip? Have you given yourself a stringent budget, or do you know from your experience 2 years ago what you need to spend to make it comfortable for you?
Yes, I mean, I know about what it's going to cost, and I have budgeted that, but I'm fortunate enough where money is not really an issue. It's not that I'm wealthy, but it's not as tight for me as some of the folks I've seen that are on the trail.
Right.
But I do try to budget and keep it reasonable. And one of the things is I think I will probably take less 0 days this time, and the fact that, you always dream of going to town and, my gosh, I need a break. But when you've stayed at a hostel for 8 days at a time,
yes, you've had enough.
Or a trail,
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be longing to get back on the trail.
I'm sure.
That's part of what the injury's probably done to me.
So, what makes you think you can beat the odds of 1 in 4 finishers? Because 2016, you obviously, because you got injured, that's the thing that's going to get everybody off the trail. But still a long way to go, even if you're fit enough and strong enough to do it. What makes you think you can beat those odds?
I don't know that I can, but it's one of the things that lures me to the trail. I need that kind of challenge. I need, I need the fact that not everybody can do it and that there's only a small percentage chance that I'll succeed. I just need that, or otherwise I get extremely bored. So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, you want to throw the dice in. Yeah, great. That's great. And you're going to get logistical support on the trail, or from, once again, I think having done it for quite a few miles last time, you learn what's good and what's bad. Are you going to have support and food drops, or are you going to supply from the trail?
Well, as far as what I've learned about the Appalachian Trail, so many places to resupply, and you really don't know what you're going to want to eat.
No, you're right.
A month from now.
Yeah.
So and I'm the type of person, I can resupply the gas station if I need to. It'll be okay. And,
that's right. Yes, you'll live. That's what it is, isn't it? You're going to live. Yeah, that's right. So, what are you looking forward to the most then? Is this going to be something that you're looking forward to the things you haven't done, or are you looking forward to redoing the things you have done but not in pain?
Well, just being back immersed into the hiking life,
sure.
Knowing that this is my life and that every day I'm going to get up and be able to hike and not have to do anything else. And the fact that I have set my life up to where, unless I do get injured where I can't hike, as long as my body will allow me, I am going to be on a trail somewhere for the rest of my life. I'm sure you've heard of Billy Goat. He's very famous on the.
Somebody else mentioned him the other day, actually. Yeah.
And I read something he wrote. Oh, actually, I saw it was an interview, and they said, well, he's done the Pacific Crest Trail quite a few times. He's done a lot of trails. But they ask him, says, what do you do as you get older? He goes, well, I don't make it all the way through, but, he goes, I will always hike. It may be that I'll do 2/3 of the trail, half the trail, or a quarter of the trail. But as long as I can be out here, I'm going to be out here and do as much as I can.
And you feel that way.
That's
you
what
feel
I
that way too. Nice. Yeah. So, in other words, when I say the pits you're looking forward to the most, there can't be much you're not looking forward to at all, then, is it? Because you just want to be out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's where I'm, it's my bliss. It's where I'm truly happy. Look, I've done about 500 miles on the Appalachian Trail in sections. And so I fully get how difficult it is. And I know you can get hurt. I was hurt. And I know that the rainy days are tough sometimes, and the ups and downs and the extremes of everything. And not every day is great. But it's better than anything I've ever experienced in my life. It's just, with its ups and downs, it's just so rewarding. And I tell you that a lot of it's just being around the trail community. I love the fact that it doesn't matter what your age is. Yeah. The fact that, you become friends with an 18-year-old just as much as you do somebody your own age. Isn't that amazing?
That was one of my big shocks as well, how great it was to just communicate with these youngsters I would never have met in real life. And I felt blessed by it every single time. And I just love that part of it as well.
Well, nobody can walk your miles for you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's like we've all got that in common. It doesn't matter whether your equipment costs $3,000 or whether it cost you $500. Everybody suffered the same that day. Yeah. It was raining on everybody.
That's right. So apart from the fund of stories that you're going to have to bore your friends with when you come back, what else do you, because we all do that, what else do you hope to gain from the experience of completing the Appalachian Trail in 2019?
I think I love asking people that question. Really, I just think that what I hope to accomplish from it is I'm trying really hard right now to live in the moment versus, because that's really the only place you can live, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what it's a philosophy. Yeah. And I think that it will really drive that home. And I think I will perfect that, I hope. Oh, cool. That's what I hope.
That's a really interesting thing, and you're absolutely right. It's an important thing to do as well. And the last question is, Will you come back on the show and tell us how it went, whether you finish or not?
Absolutely. I would love nothing more because, like I said, all I want to talk about is the trail anyway. So
That's cool. That's cool. Well, look, man, I'm leaving myself sometime in March. You may well catch me. So hopefully we'll run into each other on the trail and we can interview each other, or I can interview you on the trail as well for the podcast again. So all I can say is I wish you the best out there, and hopefully I'll see you out there.
I hope I see you, and good luck in your travels, and be safe.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy. Bye.
Okay. Goodbye.
How about that? He walked for miles on a broken leg and wants to try again. I think that's quite interesting. He kind of knows what to expect, much as I now do. So I wonder how much our approaches may change next year. Certainly living in the moment is a good credo to live your life by, and especially so on a trail. I've got a couple of more 5-star reviews on iTunes, all 3 of which I love. The one really brought home to me the impact that my guests have on some of you. Jim Birch, which is Jim spelled G-Y-M, Jim Birch calls it a fantastic podcast and tells me to keep up the good work, Mighty Blue. I intend to, Jim Birch. Skoll14 tells me that he or she is preparing to hike the Tour du Mont Blanc, which passes through parts of Switzerland, Italy and France. Skoll says that the show inspired me to do 5 guided days on the AT this past year in North Carolina and loved it. He or she also offers to come on the show to tell us about the upcoming hike once he or she has finished it. I'll take you up on that, Skoll, or Sweat Bucket, which is a rather charming trail name, it must be said. Finally, and this is the one that really got me, Bethany Ivy says, I'll never forget my summer reading project when I was 15. As far as the eye can see was my first glimpse into the AT, and I haven't forgotten it. As I approach my 29th birthday, my fascination has only been fueled by more books and thru-hiker experiences I read and take in. Not only did I ever assume this was something that only young people did, but with 2 children, 9 and 1, I had all but assumed that any possibility of a thru-hike was nothing but a fantasy to live vicariously through others. Until I stumbled upon your podcast. I have since found many other personal accounts of middle-aged adults, parents and the like, who all took on the AT later in life. Although I am only a few years into my active duty status in the United States Navy, I have already told my husband to be prepared when I retire. I am fortunate to have married a man who loves the outdoors even more than I do. So thanks, Mighty Blue, for helping me realise that my once-adolescent fantasy is something that I can make a once-in-a-lifetime actuality. How awesome is that? By the way, 2 things. First, thank you for your service, Bethany. And second, I'm so sorry, Mr. Ivy, as you're now going to have to put up with about 25 years of talk and preparation for the AT. Enjoy. But how wonderful for her to realise that this is an any age endeavour. The last couple of weeks we've had younger men and women, but this really is something for all ages. Now, chapter 23 and day 22 from the year we seize the day. Our pair are leaving Lyon and everything is a little bit strained between them. I'll see you next week. Chapter 23, day 22, Lyon to Hospital de Orbigo.
Ellie, Stations of the Camino. By the time we leave the city, Lyon has become a signpost along the Camino. One of those places or events so significant you know that in time it will become a point of reference, like a family Christmas that went horribly wrong. From that day on, there would be pre or post Lyon. Colin needed me to stay there at the table. I needed to be alone. So after waiting for the air to somewhat clear between us, I excused myself, assured him I would return, then escaped to a dark cave in the doorway of a quiet street, curled into a ball and privately fell apart. I had known moments like these, but such cruel words had never been delivered with such sincerity. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't, nor could I blame him. I want to be a better man, he said. One look at his face told me that he did. Perhaps it had all become too much. Perhaps I had expected more of him than he could give. Either way, Colin and I have a commitment to each other that has grown beyond the path ahead, and despite what happens between now and Santiago, it's one I need to know I have done my best to keep. Nevertheless, I wake angry the next morning, seething from the event. Thinking about it makes me physically sick. I skip breakfast and stick with coffee instead. We were both doing our best under the circumstances, and although I held no animosity towards him for what had happened, damage had been done, and his words were now sitting in the pit of my stomach like rancid deli ham. I spend most of my time walking at a distance. I don't want Colin to bear the brunt of how I feel, even though I know my silence suggests I am trying to punish him. I'm not. I'm ready to snap, and I'm dreading something that might set me off. It won't take much. The way passes through the suburbs and industrial estates of Lyon before we veer off along an alternative route that offers distance and reprieve from the noise of traffic roaring along the N120. Still, not a word has been spoken between us, and this time we take the long way. It is flat, hot, stark and endless. The wheat of the Meseta is replaced by dry open fields and shrubbery. Tumbleweed races across the path before us. Later, corn and maize fields appear with an irrigation channel running parallel to the sealed strip, sections of barren expanse followed by hours along a desolate road. It's along this sealed road that I spot up ahead a German girl I met in a cafe in Lyon the day before. Her name is Daniela, and she has a sore foot. She got her first blister yesterday. I'm not sure where she started walking. I didn't want to know. But she is a school teacher and has limited time, so began just 3 days ago. We've met many school teachers along the Camino. It's approaching school holiday in Europe, and it appears many have taken the previous week off to walk. I can think of better ways to spend a vacation. We're gaining on her at a rate, and as she comes into view, it appears quite obvious that she's struggling. She's alone. She stumbles with cross steps and looks like I did on our second day. I stop and wait for Colin. "What do you think?" I ask, breaking the silence for the first time all day. "Yep, she's in trouble, all right. Oops." He pauses as Daniela stops on cue and leans forward without bending at the waist, then sways back as if gauging her centre of gravity. "There you go." She staggers off. I'm going to see if she's okay. I jog up behind her on the trail. "Hola, Daniela." "Hi," she says, squeezing a pathetic tri-smile. "It's good to see you. How are you feeling?" "Oh, it's hot," she says. "So hot, and I'm not going too good. Just got to get together with the legs and the head. It's all going to be a good day. Pretty." Her English was much better yesterday, but today she's slurring words like a seasoned drunk. "Hey, I'm thinking of stopping for a break up ahead. Do you want to join me?" "No, I think just to... Nothing." "All right, are you sure?" "Yes, just to get the legs together." Well, that would be a good start. "Okay, hey, do you have enough water?" "Yes, I have a platypus like Australia," she states happily. "Huh? Well, you take care, and remember, Colin and I are not far behind if you need anything." No reply. I jog back to Colin. She's buggered. "Yeah? I think it's the heat." "Elle, it's 40 degrees. We're walking on hot asphalt. Do you realise how fit we've become? I used to envy those European bosses and Roncesvalles as they marched past up those hills. But look at them now. They're melting. Being Aussie, the heat is the only advantage we have." He's right. The heat is not even a factor anymore, and for a moment we're laughing again. We walk on, rippling heat, geography time. A year ago I was speaking at a conference in Western Australia and hadn't been back to Perth since meeting Colin at a literary festival the previous year. We had kept email contact throughout that time. I called him the following day to let him know I was in town and see if he was free to meet. That afternoon, he picked me up at my hotel and we drove along the coast to Indiana's, a tea house in Cottesloe overlooking the ocean. It was there, over a pot of tea with milk and honey, that Colin and I first talked about his wife, Helen. Today, the conversation continues. Colin begins to tell me a story about his wife. Crunch, click, crunch. "Hey, Elle, can I get your opinion on something?" "Of course." But hearing him mention Helen and my opinion in the same breath makes my stomach grip and turn worse than before. Though it's not bothered me before, I realise how significant these issues have become for him in recent weeks, and equally how important my reply will be. Colin speaks of his wife's death like a riddle, with an answer he knows is there, but just can't find. We spend time sharing thoughts about her, their lives together, the good times, the hard times, their daughters, her suicide, the affair, the guilt, and the funeral. He seems happy we spoke and finishes by telling me that I help him understand women in a way no one can. He says it's my honesty, but we both know it's because I am so similar to most of the other women in his life. I am complex in thought, overanalyse everything, vacillate hourly between confident and self-conscious, and generally confuse the hell out of everyone, including myself. I can only imagine how frustrating it is for men to try to understand. But while many don't, Cole has always found sense in the things I say. Suddenly, I am walking alone. I turn to see Colin stooped by the side of the road, his head in his hands. I wander tentatively back along the trail. He tells me that the conversation has sparked a flashback. He's remembered a dream he had last night. I draw a long and sorry breath. God, what have I done? I drop my pack, crouch down beside him in the dirt and reach across to comfort him. So, mate, where do we start today? Trying to make sense of the mess has become a daily exercise for Cole. But despite how long it takes or how much progress he seems to make, establishing some kind of peace by nightfall doesn't guarantee it will still be there by morning. Typically, it starts all over again each day by day, step by step. Welcome to the Camino. In Hospital del Abrigo that night, I lie awake with Colin screaming in his sleep and tossing in the bunk beneath me. I think back to the sight of him falling to his haunches, head and hands, a shattered man. What constitutes a breakdown? When is enough too much? Who would I call if I needed to? What would I tell his girls? I lie awake that night and cry. For Colin, for the daughters he constantly compares me to, and for his dead wife, whom I never even knew. It has been a long day.